Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This Shabbat, we have two portions. We have Acharei Mot and Kedoshim. These are two portions that are special in their own way, of course, and we will talk about it, but actually the combination of both of them is very special too. We're in the book of Leviticus, of course, and it begins with chapter 16. And where it starts, it's actually we read this on Yom Kippur. The this event that when the tent of meeting was inaugurated on the eighth day of the inauguration of the temple, the original, what would become the permanent temple, the two sons of Aaron, who were the sons of the high priest, the first high priest, on his first day of the job, on the inauguration day, his two sons died. We talked about it when we were reading about it and the inauguration, how tragic it was. But we also looked at what the Torah is telling us about those two children, that they brought a foreign fire somehow. They brought something that they were not supposed to bring. And therefore they died. They played with fire, literally, and the fire killed them. So that's really important to understand when we are in relationship with the holy, with God, with the sacred. We have to be very respectful. We have to take our shoes off, so to speak, right? When Moses had to take his shoes off when he met God in the burning bush, God said, "This is a holy place. You take your shoes off." So the reverence that we need to have. But what I want to focus on today is actually in the kind of the borderline of the two parashot, the two separate reading. They're both short parashot because clearly, if they're combined, that means that we're not in a leap year, because a leap year would have an extra month, and then we have to spread. It's like an accordion. We'll have to spread the parashot to fit more weeks. But this year is a regular year, so those parashot are together. So it starts by telling us that what happens after the death of the sons of Aaron. It says God spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, who died when they drew too close to God's presence. Okay, so here it's giving us another clue why they died. In the episode itself, it told us that they brought a foreign fire somehow. So an alien fire. Here it tells us that they came too close to God. Now it could be that they came too close physically or too close to casual. You know, when you're in the military and you have a commander and you have to be respectful, right? It's not buddy buddies. And if you treat them like that, you can really be in trouble. So you have to call him or her with their rank, and you have to salute when you see them. Otherwise, you can go on court martial, and you can go to jail or have some sort of punishment. So um, something happened to them, and they died. Now, before we continue, the two parashot, the Acharei Mot, after the death, and the other parasha, which is holy, you shall be holy. People use it many times in spoken language today, and as a phrase. to say that after any death comes holiness. So what it means is that death is not the end of the line, that we believe that death itself could be also a cleansing mechanism. So if someone was a very bad person, a sinful person, um, but it did committed horrible crimes, his or her death itself is a cleansing mechanism, and then they're holy. Another thing was that if you die as a martyr for your Judaism, just because you're Jewish, so 6 million Jews lived in Europe and died in the Holocaust, then after they die, they're holy. In Arab countries, all the hundreds of thousands of people who died and also had their own calamities, just because they're Jewish, then you die, but then you are holy. We're now in the season. I'm looking at the trees and they're starting to come back to life, and the flowering and the blooming. And just a minute ago, everything was dead. So it's very befitting this season and this idea that after death comes holiness. And really, holiness means life in the Jewish context, because living just physically is not enough. It really is. We're mandated, we're commanded to live holy life, and when we talk about holy life, it means the spiritual life, the life that gives us the eternal life, not just the present life, the temporal life. If we have the abundance of property or money or so forth, it's good to have, but it doesn't provide us, it doesn't give us eternal life. So we need to take everything we have in life, everything that God gives us, and invest it in the eternal, the life that will last after our body and soul separate. And what it means is living holy life. What it means is taking our physical life and sanctifying it. And I'll give an example. We have 7 days in a week, but one day is holy, is the essence of holiness. The Torah, the first time the Torah uses the word holy, it uses it in the context of Shabbat. When God separated the seventh day, he rested on the seventh day and made it holy. So he made it separate. He made it somehow special. So that's really what it means to live holy life, is to take from everything you have and designate part of it for heaven. It's almost like putting aside a heavenly account, savings account. So every time we keep Shabbat, we put holiness aside and we put it in that eternal account that will last after we're gone physically. So okay, so this is the idea. So what it's telling us in between those two parashot is that after the death of the two sons of Aaron on the day of the inauguration, the most tragic event probably that you can have, because it also was on a very a happy day, and to have this tragedy on that specific day accentuates the tragedy as well. And then not one son but two sons, and so forth. So what the Torah is telling us, that no matter what we go through, there'll be a portion after that will be life, that will be life-giving, and but of course we have to embrace it. We have to work for it. So okay, so what happened? God said to Moses, "Tell your brother." And that, of course, after the death of his two sons, that he is not to come at will into the shrine behind the curtain, meaning the Holy of Holies. And really, what it means is he can't just casually come into the Holy of Holies. That is the definition of when we say holy, 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 that God is kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. God is separate, separate, separate. God is somehow designated in a special place. So, of course, it could be a spiritual place. It doesn't have to be a physical place. But in our case, as we talked about last Shabbat, the way that the temple was constructed was holy, holy, holy. The whole yard, of course, with the fence around it is a holy, is Beit HaMikdash, is the place of holiness. But then within it we have the holy and then the holy of holies. So these are three levels of different holiness. So you can't, even the high priest can just come in whenever he wants to see, so to speak, God in the Holy of Holies. He has to it has to set up an appointment, so to speak, and that's really what it is. Only on Yom Kippur, one day of the year, this one person can enter that one place. So we have a place, a person, and a time that meet once a year. So, but saying it right after his sons died, the juxtaposition here tells us that what they did was being too casual with God. They did what they wanted to do. Okay, so then it says you can't come into the Holy of Holies in the front of the cover of the ark, for I appear in the cloud over the cover. So what Moses is telling us is that God appears, of course, in his manifestation on earth, which is not physical, but a cloud is some sort of a material that is not material. That there's a cloud, and in another place, God tells us that he speaks to us from between the two cherubs that are on the Ark of the Covenant. So there's something in the Ark of the Covenant that God speaks to us there. Now, by the way, the second temple did not have the ark. It was hidden, or whatever happened to it during the first temple, and it did not exist in the temple, in the Holy of Holies of the second temple. And that is also why prophecy ceased to be, because God speaks to us from the cover of the two cherubim that are on the top of the cover of the Ark of the Covenant. So if the Ark of the Covenant is not there, then God is not speaking to us, so to speak. So again, I'm saying so to speak because God speaks to us in different ways, but there wasn't official prophecy. What Christianity sees in Jesus later on is that that was a prophecy, that he, of course, was a prophet, but we don't see it that way. We still say that since the destruction of the first temple, the prophecy ceased, and that was in 586 BCE, so about 500 years, so almost 600 years before Jesus, we don't believe that God speaks to us in a official prophecy. So Aaron has to, when he comes into the Holy of Holies, it says that's only Aaron enters the shrine or the Holy of Holies with a bull. So he has to bring an offering. A bull is an offering of the community. It's not a private, because it's very expensive. And it's also, I mean, somebody can bring a bull if they want, if they're very, very wealthy. But really, bulls were brought as a communal offering. So the high priest brings the offering for the people. So he is bringing it for the community. And if you remember the liturgy of the Yom Kippur, he brings three offerings. He has three parts of his service. And what are these three parts? One is he has to first cleanse himself, right? Before you put like in the airline, in the security training, is you have to first put the mask on yourself before you put it on somebody else in case of emergency. So you have to first be clean before you clean somebody else. You have to first redeem yourself before you can redeem somebody else. So he brings an offering for himself, then he brings an offering for his family, and then he brings an offering for the people. So expiation for himself, expiation for his family, then expiation for the people. I wish more people would remember this concept, that before they blame others or before they trying to save the world, they should concentrate on their personal space, wherever they are. And that's a very important lesson in general when people ask themselves, what is God asking me to do? Where do I need to intervene, and where do I not required to intervene? So the answer is wherever you are. Wherever you are with your feet, this is where God wants you to take care of. So if you walk in the street and you see somebody fall, if you saw it and you were there, you have an obligation to help that person. Even if there are another 100 people around you, you will be one of 100 people who would be required to help. Of course, if you're just by yourself, but it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, that's really, so you don't have to overthink where you need to intervene and where you don't. If you see something on TV that happened in another continent, as human beings, we were not trained to know what happened in a different continent. Or if we know what happened, it doesn't mean that we need to intervene right away. Focus on where you are and what God wants you from here. So you have to start with yourself, with your area. So it's the way to think about it is that we are supposed to reflect light. We are vessels of light. The tent of meeting, or what will be the temple, is a container of light. It contains the Shekhinah, the glory of God. And the glory of God appears in this world as light, and all its derivatives as fire, smoke, and so forth. So the idea is to be also the light upon the nation, light right for the nations, to embody the rules of God, the laws, and reflect them out. So we can't reflect anything out if we don't embody it first. So the process is really concentric circles that expand. So, like you throw a stone in into water, and it expands. The circles around it expand, or light that comes from pushes the darkness, so to speak, from the center. So this is how we need to be. It reflects in the construction of the temple, and we are as a temple ourselves. This is how we're supposed to approach it. So God is telling us, you have to come clean and clear and holy and pure before you enter my sanctuary. So Aaron had to cleanse himself, bring an offering, and then he wears, dressed in a sacral linen tunic. So a very simple sacral linen tunic. It's not gold or anything too fancy. It has to be humble and clean. And then with linen breeches next to his flesh, and be girt with a linen sash, and he shall wear a linen turban. So he's white. Everything is pure and white. They are sacral vestments. He shall bathe in water and then put them on. So of course, physical cleanliness is important too, but that's going to the mikvah. That's where the mikvah started. We had a ritual bath. It's not just a bath to be clean, but it's to be pure. It's to cleanse ourselves. Okay. Yes, Leah?
Yes. Now, the mikveh, it sounds like from what you're saying that the mikveh started with men, with a man, and then today it's associated more with women.
That's a beautiful question. It really started with both. This is where we learn about the high priest. But last Shabbat, when we talked about purity and impurity, we talked about women. Remember, after women give birth,
Yes.
they have to go into the mikvah. So it's really both. There are cases where men have to be immersed in the mikvah, and then cases that women have to be immersed. But it's both.
Mostly in today's world, if you ask a Jewish person who gets a mikvah, I think most people would say women.
So that's misconception, because in many Orthodox circles and ultra-Orthodox, they go usually before Shabbat. Now, they're not required to go if there's no physical reason to go. That's true. Men are not required, but in the time that we had the temple and that we brought offerings to the temple, we had to bring those offerings in a holy and pure state. So men absolutely had to go into the mikvah. Today, because we don't have the temple, and let's say the Kohanim, the priests, they don't really serve in the holy and holy of holies. So there's no requirement. Many requirements and laws that were associated with the temple. Once we don't have the temple, we're not required to fulfill them. When we have the third temple, then those rules are going to come back. But right now, they're not required. But there are many men who go to the mikvah absolutely on a regular basis, usually before Shabbat, but also if they had any bodily mission, they have to go. That is a requirement to cleanse yourself. Now, today we use uh, the shower to cleanse ourselves. The law is if you use enough water in the shower, it constitutes like a mikveh. But nothing is like fresh water, of course. You need to go into, it doesn't have to be a per se mikveh. It could be any natural body of water, salt or fresh, that you go into. So on Shelter Island, no problem. You can go at the end of every street. You have a natural mikveh. You go in and you can immerse. Try to do it when other people are not around, because you have to take off all your clothes and everything that separates between the water and your skin. So, okay, so he has to go through this ritual and cleanse himself, cleanse his people, his household, and then the people. I'm not going to read through this, because this is also what we read in the on the high holidays. And but what's important here, because what I'm focusing on today is really the overlap between the death and the coming back to life. If you want, like resurrecting life, by bringing, this is a recipe that how the Torah tells us how to return to life from a tragedy or from any trauma. And really, if we leave this for 1 second, we'll come back to this. But if you think about the way that the Torah started, the Torah from the beginning starts rebuilding from trauma. Something happened, and there was a chaos. There was tohu vavohu, and God's spirit was hovering over the water, over the deep. So something was topsy-turvy, and God had to put it in order, right? He said, let there be light first, and then let there, so light, of course, the spirit. Without the spirit, there's really nothing there. So he already injected the spirit, but he organized it. He said, okay, we need to separate this water from the water above to reveal the land, to divide the creation to 7 days. So he put things in order. So we know that something traumatic already was happening before God started putting order in this world. Similarly, when the Israelites left Egypt, they left a traumatic event, slavery of hundreds of years. And what happens right away? There was a Seder, right? There was an order put into place. So every time you come out of traumatic event, the first thing, and people casually speak about it as start putting one foot in front of the other. So it's correct. It's really what we do. So you need to have structure. You need to have offering, something that you bring out of yourself. You can't come back from anything, from any trauma or any balagan, so to speak, as we say, any chaos, if you're not willing to connect to it. You can't organize a room if you don't enter it. So you have to connect to it, and then from it rise. So bringing the offering is bringing something from ourselves, and offering means to connect to God, also to bring closer, korban. So we come close, we acknowledge that we were supposed to be that animal on the altar. And how do we know it? We know it from the next verse. We're in Leviticus 16:21, and it is after the Aaron, the high priest, it takes these two goats, and one he sends to Azazel, to the desert, and one he brings to as an offering on the altar. But this is what it says. It says, Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat and confess over it all the iniquities and transgression over the of the Israelites, whatever their sins, putting them on the head of the goat, and it shall be sent off to the wilderness through a designated agent. So the one that is going to be to the desert, and then actually the one that will be also offered, the priest have to put the priest must put his hands on the head of the animal, and this is of course where the phrase scapegoat comes from, that we put our iniquities in it, and we use it as a proxy for our own redemption. So what it means is to say, I was supposed to be that animal. I'm putting my hands on the animal to say this. We're not just now going to kill an animal, an innocent animal. We are now first transferring ourselves into it, and we see it as an act of charity from God, that God is willing to substitute us for the animal. So, okay, so this is very important. This is coming out of trauma, coming back closer to God. We tend to, if we have traumatic events, it could cause usually kind of a two-way reaction. Some people distance themselves from God, and some people actually get closer. But if the natural feeling is to ask God why, so once you ask why, you immediately remove yourself from God. Even if you ask, it doesn't matter what you feel, but if you ask, why me, God, or why did this happen? You already distance yourself from God, because you are not just going along with it. It's interesting that the word why in Hebrew is lama. But I heard a beautiful teaching that says, don't ask lama, ask lema. So it's same three letters in that word, lama and lema, and they sound the same thing, same way. But lema means for what? So instead of asking, why, God, did you put me in this situation? Ask, for what am I placed in this situation? What do you want from me in this situation? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to help intervene in this matter? And what am I supposed to bring to the world in this case? So if we use even the example of walking the street and seeing somebody fall, instead of asking, why am I in this situation now? You have to say, I'm now going, why did you put me here? So I can help this person now. And you can use it in every situation in life. Instead of asking why, which is usually a question that we will not get answers for, or at least not right away. We need to have the time lapse to realize something. Just like somebody asked, yes,
Rabbi,
yes, Leah.
the biggest question of our time is, why were 6 million Jews sacrificed?
Yeah.
And the answer is, according to what you're saying, there had to be a reason.
Absolutely. First of all, there's a reason for everything, whether we know it or not.
6 million innocent people.
So I'll give you two things about it. So first of all, I want to expand it from the 6 million because we often neglect mentioning the Jews of the Arab countries that went through traumatic experiences as well. So that whole time was a traumatic time and very violent and horrific time for the Jewish people. So I'll start with what the Lubavitch Rebbe said when he was asked about it. And he said, I don't know. When the Messiah comes, it will be the first question I'll ask them or him, right? I'll ask him. So, so we don't know exactly, but what we do know is out of that trauma, the state of Israel was born.
Yes.
So again, it could have been born before, after. It's not only because of the Holocaust the state of Israel was born, but it was definitely an induced way to create the state of Israel because of really we had no choice, and all the persecution caused the people to leave and to flee and to come to Israel, and the realization, those who of course didn't survive, but those who did survive it, it was very clear to them, the realization that we have to have our own state, something, and our own army that we can defend ourselves. So actually, these two parashot, as I mentioned earlier, are used for exactly that, to say Acharei Mot, after the death of people who died for God or died as Jews or died in an unjust way, Kedoshim, holy. So that's why we in the prayer, El Maleh Rachamim, God full of mercy, right? El Maleh Rachamim, right? You remember that? I don't want to say it because it's Shabbat, but we ask God to protect the souls of those holy people, right? So it means that we use those two kind of the fact that these two parashot are next to each other to say, yes, after the death comes holiness. So that death gives birth to holiness. It created some sort of holiness. So those people who died in the Holocaust or in the Arab countries, they are now holy. We see them as holy souls, because they were offered, almost like as we put an offering on the altar, they were offered to somehow to God, to say they sacrificed. They were a sacrifice. And that's why we call it Holocaust. The word Holocaust comes from one of the offerings, the Holocaust offering. That is the original name. And what does that mean, Holocaust offering? Is that everything burns. It's the another name for the offering of the burnt offering. So the Holocaust is the burnt offering, and it's the one offering that everything burns and goes up in smoke. Nothing is left behind but the ashes. So we can't benefit. We don't eat that offering. We don't, we can't benefit from the skin. We put the animal as is, and it all goes up in smoke. What stays is the ashes, but the ashes, that's why if you know this expression, that the Jewish people rose from the ashes, right? You familiar with this expression? That the Jewish people rose from the ashes. So even with this total annihilation and traumatic event, we still came back out of the ashes. And a couple of weeks ago, when we talked about the Ezekiel's dry bones image, that God will bring the people of Israel, even he'll gather the dry bones, the valley of the dry bones, and start putting back sinews and blood vessels into them, and they will rise to be people again, living people again. So, yeah.
Then why are people against the Jewish Orthodox people or regular Jews against cremation if they believe in the ashes?
Well, we believe in the ashes, that God brought us back from the ashes, but that's not the normal place, the normal situation. The body decays, but we still have the bones left normally, right? So God can bring us from anywhere, from a speck. I mean, if God created us to begin with, so if God wants us to come back, God will bring us back from wherever we are. But it's almost like helping God help us. So ashes are not the natural way to depart from this world. There's the way I explain people in funerals that are faced with this choice, and I give them the imagery of, think of, let's say if you're in a position, you have a job, and they tell you, your boss comes and tells you, we're phasing out this department, and you have a year to figure out, where to go. Or somebody comes to you and said, you know what, you're fired right now, take your stuff and leave. Okay, so these are two very different ways to depart. So the way we are supposed to depart from this world, just like it takes 9 months to be born, it takes 9 months to die. Think of a fruit on the tree that develops for a while, then it becomes ripe, and then when it falls from the tree, it doesn't disappear right away. It decays one stage at a time. So that is really the natural way to depart from this world. So if you are burned, I mean, if that's the cremation, is pushing that process and pushing us out of this world sooner than we need. Our existence doesn't end with our breath. It started before we were breathing, and it continues after we're breathing, again in a different state. But we have to respect the whole process, the whole cycle of life and death. And that's why we don't do cremation. Now,
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Some also, like even in the Reform Judaism, their view of it is not so much because of what I was saying. The soul has also 5 levels, and the soul needs to depart in that order, instead of being pushed out. It's more for them. They say, yes, it's better not to cremate, but also if just for the reason that we were put in crematoria in the Holocaust.
Yes.
not to mimic that process.
Yes.
So
Amen.
yes. So but the main reason, of course, is that it's not the natural way, and the soul is built of different levels, 5 levels of the soul. So we need to let those 5 levels depart
The
in
body's
the
supposed to be
way.
buried whole. That's my
The
understanding.
body, the
The body
body,
is supposed to be buried whole and intact in a
yep,
Jewish cemetery.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
it.
Yep, that's it. And people who are unfortunately, let's say, are
When
at
my baby
war.
passed away, I made sure that she had a proper Jewish burial, even though she wasn't born alive because she was 39 weeks, so she was viable. So
Oh,
I was made sure that she was put in a Jewish cemetery intact
then yes, absolutely.
because I felt like that was the right thing to do based on my knowledge of Judaism.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It wasn't to do
Rabbi,
something clever like cremate her and put her ashes in the park on a bench. It was to put her
Yeah.
body in a cemetery near some family.
Yes, and people who, if they do choose to be cremated, should then bury the cremation, the cremains anyway, after. Yes, Leah.
well, man, some years back, I was asked to officiate very privately in someone's home about the death of a particular beloved man. And they were cremating him. And there was a child in the family, maybe 8 years old, and she heard that they were having a cremation and she understood what it was. And during this little ceremony that we had, she started to cry and she said, they burnt my grandpa.
You see?
Such agony.
Yes, you see. So even a
To
child.
get the innocence of that child understood
Yeah.
that it was not a natural thing to do.
Right. So a child naturally feels that that's not the right way to do it.
Those were her words. They burned my grandpa.
Yeah.
Not my grandpa's dead or my grandpa is buried, but they burned him.
Right. Yeah.
She was angry.
And actually the Talmud tells us that the body feels that. The person feels that burn. That it's not just that, it doesn't look right, it doesn't sound, it doesn't feel right either. They are there, it's painful for the body to be burned. Because think about it, the body still.
A lot of Jewish people now, they say, oh, I'm definitely going to be cremated, like they're heroic.
Yeah, no, that should be, you should try to dissuade them. Yeah, for different, really, they have to understand, give you an example. When you cut a chicken's head off, I don't know if you've ever seen that. Again, that's why we slaughter. We don't just chop the head of animals, but they
live.
They continue to live for a couple minutes.
Yes.
You can see a chicken running without its head.
Yes.
So the body is still has the life in it, even if we stop breathing. So if you do that, that's why Christians do the wake, right? 3 days. They wait 3 days to make sure the person is really gone and not will not wake up. So, because these things happen. So we have to be respectful of life from the beginning to end. So it's, when we talk about, of course, abortion, the baby is not here yet, so to speak, right? But there's already life somewhere, right? It has its life that has developed. And that's why, even like Megan said, with stillborn child, it's still it's a loss. So it's the same thing. Now I'll give you what in ancient times what they used to do in order to save space too. They didn't have those big cemeteries. Some had. I mean, there are places of cemeteries, but many families had designated area that they would bury the dead, and usually the ground was moist and to allow the flesh to disintegrate, faster or within the 9 months. And then they would collect the bones and put it in a sarcophagus, a family sarcophagus, that they would, all the bones of the one family would be in one place or one cave. So that really is where the expression "he was gathered to his forefathers," that's where it comes from. That literally they gathered his bones and brought it. So the bones of Joseph, the bones of when they came out of Egypt, the Israelites took the bones of Jacob of Joseph. So there's still something in those bones of us, and God says, keep those bones because I'm going to bring life back out of those bones. So this is the part of the after the trauma, the death. The Torah tells us how to come back to life, how to come back closer to God, and God, of course, is the source of life. So every time you bring an offering, you cleanse yourself, you come back mentally, spiritually, physically back to God. These are all steps to come back to life. And then we'll just spend a few minutes talking about about holiness, what it means to be holy. And this is God says, to be holy is to be separate in many ways, is to be designated. So we're the Holy Land, for example, right? Israel is a holy land. It's a designated land, that in that land we do certain things. The law of the land will be according to what God tells us to do, but also what we don't do in that land. And God begins the directive right here. He says to us, speak to the Israelite people and say to them, I am your God, Adonai, your God. You shall not copy the practices of the land of Egypt, where you dwelt, where I brought you from, where you left, or of the land of Canaan, to which I am taking you, nor shall you follow their laws. Which means God is telling us, you're kind of in the middle here. You shouldn't be doing what the acts of the Egyptians, follow the rituals of the Egyptians where you came from, nor were you going to Canaan, because that's why I'm removing those nations from before you, because they have been so corrupt that they can't stay on my holy land. That the holy land cannot tolerate them. So there are times where the Torah tells us, if you don't live holy life on this land, the land will throw you out. But it really the land will throw up. It uses the word throw up. It'll throw up you. So and then you will be out of the land. So what are these things supposed to include? And then there's a whole list of the forbidden acts, forbidden sexual acts that we read every Yom Kippur. You shall keep my laws and my rules. You shall not come near anyone of his own flesh to uncover nakedness, meaning incest. And then it goes through all the forbidden relationship, incestual relationship within it. And then, so sexuality and the way we conduct ourselves sexually is the number one pathway to holiness. And Maimonides, who took the whole Talmud and organized it in 14 volumes. One of the volumes is called Holiness, and there are only 2 topics in it. And what are the 2 topics? How to be holy, the topic of sexuality, and forbidden food. So forbidden sexual acts and forbidden food. Why? Because he says this is really where a human being separates themselves from the animal. The animals will have relations with whoever, and they're not going to marry first. I mean, some animals are mated for life and all that, but in terms of food, they'll see food, they'll eat it. They don't say blessing before they eat it. They'll eat whatever they can eat. But for a human being, we don't do what we can. We do what we're permitted to. So even if you can have sexual relation with a person that is not allowed for you to have, then you stay away from it. Food, you only eat kosher food in its right time, in its right place. So this is where we separate from the animals in those 2 basic needs of sexuality and food. So and then it goes into literally Kedoshim. What are you supposed to do to be holy besides the forbidden sexual act is to eat kosher. If it should be eaten on the 3rd day, it is offensive thing. It will not be acceptable if you bring something on the 3rd day. So if it not just when what you eat, but when you eat it. So there are 3 main prescriptions in the Torah: when, where, and how much. If you know how to live when, where, and how much, this is pretty much the Torah. And then and of course keeping the Sabbath, and it's almost like a repetition of the 10 Commandments. Don't lie, don't put a stumbling block before a blind person, and so forth. This is really where it is. So just to conclude, what the way we transition from Acharei Mot, after the death, into holy life, it means that we don't just live to survive. The death doesn't just symbolize the physical death. It means that we have to come back to life. We have to come back to full life, to holy life. And holy life means a fulfilled life. That means to live the holiness, which means to not do certain things, and on the other hand, do things. So be charitable, be good to other, of course, not just because you want to, but also because you're commanded. And then staying away from certain sexual acts and certain forbidden foods, and so forth. That's how we come back from life, from death into life. It means that we can bring ourselves from life, from death, back into life if we come back to God and come back to the holy life that God prescribes for us.